Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A quiet architect buys a crumbling house on the edge of suburbia, only to ignite a brutal war with a power-hungry HOA queen. Lies, sabotage, and buried corruption spiral into a high-stakes battle where property lines are just the beginning. Welcome to the neighborhood. I first laid eyes on the place during one of those early spring days when Texas weather can't decide if it's done with winter or about to throw a heat wave your way. The house sat back from the road, shaded by two ancient pecan trees and cradled by a soft slope of land that gave it a bit of quiet dignity. It wasn't much to look at in its current state. The porch sagged, the paint flaked like sunburned skin, and the shutters hung like drunks leaning on the walls. But I saw potential. I always see potential. Comes with being an architect, I suppose. I wasn't looking to flip it. This wasn't some weekend project for resale. I'd been living alone on the lot next door for nearly 6 years, and I wanted to buy this property to expand. My studio was outgrowing the small guest house I'd converted, and frankly, I was tired of HOA board meetings treating me like a barnacle on their shiny suburban yacht just because my house didn't match their beige conformity. The truth: my property never was, and still isn't, under HOA jurisdiction. It's an independent lot, predating the subdivision by about 30 years. I like it that way. The seller, Mr. Howell, was an 80-something veteran who just wanted out. His kids were urging him to move into assisted living closer to Dallas, and he was ready to let go. We'd spoken a few times before. Good man, sharp for his age, wore flannel in the summer, and had a habit of feeding every stray cat within a 10-mile radius. We shook hands after a brief walkthrough, and I told him I'd move on it fast. He seemed relieved. It was right then, just as we were stepping off the porch, that the trouble arrived in a gleaming silver SUV. The window rolled down with a quiet hum, revealing a woman with teeth too white and eyebrows too precise to be trusted. She was already frowning. "Mr. Howell, can I speak with you for a moment?" she called out, not bothering to acknowledge me. Mr. Howell, bless his heart, looked like a kid caught sneaking candy. "Now's not a great time, Karen," he muttered, suddenly preoccupied with brushing lint off his sleeve. Karen. Of course it was Karen. She opened the door and stepped out like she owned the soil under her heels. Tall, mid-50s, dressed like a lifestyle magazine editor who just fired her entire staff. Heels on gravel, pressed slacks, HOA clipboard tucked under her arm. She walked right past me. "Mr. Howell," she said again, placing a hand on his arm like a dentist about to deliver bad news. "I've heard that you're selling, and I hope this is just a rumor." "It's not," he said flatly. "I've made up my mind." Her eyes finally flicked to me, then narrowed like she was staring down a bug that had wandered into her pool. "And who exactly are you?" I introduced myself, extending a hand she didn't take. "Neighbor, architect, buyer." "You're buying this house." Her voice had the warmth of a cold car door handle. "That's the plan." "I see," she said, but the tone really meant, "over my dead body." What followed was the most awkward 10 minutes of my month. She launched into some incoherent monologue about community standards, neighborhood harmony, and transitioning properties, none of which applied, since this house was, like mine, outside the boundaries of the HOA. I told her that plainly. "You may not be within the jurisdiction," she said, tightening her grip on that damn clipboard, "but you're adjacent. That carries responsibilities." "To whom?" "To the people who live here. To the character of the neighborhood." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, with all due respect, character doesn't come from matching mailboxes." She gave me a look like she was calculating how many violations my face would rack up if it were architectural. After she left, flustered, clearly displeased, Howell turned to me with a grimace. "Sorry about that. She's been on my case since I told her I was thinking of selling. She wants to buy this place herself. Or, more accurately, she wants her nephew to buy it. HOA would love to rope this house into their grip." That figured. 2 days later, my realtor called with a concerned tone I didn't like. Apparently, Karen had contacted their office, warning them that if they facilitated a transaction that disrupts community integrity, there could be legal complications. She didn't stop there. Word had it she'd also spoken to a few other agents in the area, trying to apply pressure. No formal complaint, just thinly veiled threats about noise ordinances and compliance issues. I wasn't surprised. I was pissed. But here's the thing. I don't fold. I had every right to buy that house, and I wasn't going to let some overcooked suburban tyrant stop me. I told my agent to go ahead and start the paperwork. And just like that, I stepped into a war I didn't start, but sure as hell intended to finish. If there's one thing I've learned living next to an HOA-controlled community, it's that they never attack head-on. No, they prefer whisper campaigns and indirect sabotage, like termites in a support beam. You don't see the damage until the damn thing collapses. About a week after I signed the purchase agreement with Mr. Howell, things got weird. I started getting odd looks from neighbors who used to wave. Cars that used to roll by, slow and curious, now sped up like they were afraid my driveway might be contagious. One guy, the hedge-trimming retiree with more lawn equipment than personality, actually turned his back on me when I nodded hello. Then came the blog post. I found it through a link someone anonymously emailed to me. It was posted on a local lifestyle blog, the kind of site usually reserved for backyard barbecue recipes and recycled dog adoption stories. The headline read, "Is there a hidden environmental hazard in our neighborhood?" The article started with vague concern about changes in soil density and unreported geological shifts near the edge of the neighborhood. The edge being, of course, my newly purchased property. According to this so-called expert blogger, a man named Paul Garrett, independent eco-journalist, there had been unofficial reports of subsidence and runoff risks near my lot. No sources, no images, just a carefully crafted sense of dread. Buried in the second half was a reference to a private engineering assessment, supposedly commissioned by concerned members of the community. The report, he claimed, showed the soil was unstable and potentially dangerous to adjacent lots if altered or disturbed. It didn't name me. It didn't have to. You'd think no one would fall for such obvious fear-mongering, but fear makes people stupid. Within 48 hours, the post had been shared on the neighborhood's private Facebook group, mentioned in 2 community email chains, and quoted in a goddamn printed flyer I found stuck under my windshield wiper at the grocery store. The cherry on top, Karen herself resharing the post on her personal Facebook page with the comment, "Safety should always come before development." I nearly put a fist through my laptop. Naturally, I started digging. Paul Garrett turned out to be a pseudonym. The domain was registered under a shell email, and the site's hosting info was deliberately anonymized. But one reverse image search later, I found the photo used on his profile was lifted from a decade-old landscaping brochure. So, I started calling local engineering firms. By the third call, I struck gold. A junior civil tech at one of the firms, clearly not briefed on the art of discretion, confirmed that an order for a basic slope stability review had come in under the name of K West Community Services, LLC. That's Karen. HOA presidents love to build fake little companies for community outreach. I thanked him and hung up. Then I did what any responsible landowner would do. I hired a real geotechnical team. A licensed, by-the-book, boring-as-hell team that took core samples, ran seismic tests, and wrote a 30-page report so dry you could use it to soak up an oil spill. Verdict: the land was stable. In fact, it was more stable than some of the approved lots further into the HOA area. No risk of subsidence, no slope creep, no drainage problems, just good Texas clay and some deep roots. I published the report everywhere. I mailed copies to the HOA board, certified. I uploaded a redacted version to the same Facebook group Karen used to peddle fear. I printed out pages and posted them on the community bulletin board outside the neighborhood clubhouse with a note. Since we're sharing unverified soil reports, here's one from an actual geologist. Karen didn't comment. But within days, her post disappeared. So did the blog. One click, and poof, page not found. But the damage had been done. The seed of doubt was already planted in some people's heads. I overheard 2 neighbors at the coffee shop whispering that I should leave the land undeveloped just in case. Another jogger stopped by my property line and asked, real polite, if I was worried about messing with the ecosystem. Right. Because replacing a rotting porch and fixing a cracked foundation was somehow an ecological crisis. I knew now that Karen wasn't just trying to stop me from moving in. She wanted to isolate me, turn me into a liability, a threat, something the community would reject on instinct, not because of what I'd done, but because of what they were told I might do. It was psychological warfare with garden gloves on, so I decided to respond in kind. Not by throwing punches, but by staying 2 steps ahead. If she wanted to play with shadows and rumors, I'd drag every dirty move she made into the daylight, because now I knew exactly what I was up against, and I wasn't about to play nice. A few days of silence followed the whole soil fiasco, and I almost let myself believe Karen had gone underground to lick her wounds. Maybe she'd moved on to harassing someone over Christmas lights being 2 inches too bright or a garden gnome not matching neighborhood character. No such luck. Instead, she upgraded her tactics, from psychological manipulation to outright sabotage. It started on a Wednesday morning. I'd been out picking up some salvaged wood for a new gate I wanted to build, and when I came back, there was a white utility van parked halfway up my gravel drive. 2 guys in fluorescent vests were dragging out plastic trash bins and chunks of rotted lumber from the back corner of the yard, near the shed that came with the property. "Hey!" I shouted, setting my coffee on the hood of my truck a little too hard. "What the hell are you doing?" One of them, tall and sunburned, looked up like I'd just asked him to pass the salt. "HOA ordered a cleanup," he said, brushing dirt off his gloves. I blinked. "What a gway." He blinked back, confused. The HOA. For the area. We were told this lot was being prepped for reintegration." Reintegration? That word hit my ears like wet cement. I walked past them, ignoring the second guy, who looked suddenly uncertain. The shed door was wide open. 2 folding chairs, some stacked bricks, and a rusted grill had been removed and loaded into the van. They'd even unlatched part of the side fence and started yanking on the posts like they were inspecting rot. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "You've got 60 seconds to tell me who sent you and under what authority," I said calmly. "Because this property isn't under HOA control, and I sure as hell didn't authorize this." Now they were both uncomfortable. The tall one looked at the other like, "You said this was cleared." The other guy, shorter with a backwards cap and the confidence of someone who'd never been punched in the mouth, muttered something about just following work orders. "Let me see the paperwork," I said. He pulled out a crumpled dispatch sheet. No letterhead, no address, just a generic task description that read, "Remove unapproved refuse from lot, coordinate with HOA rep on site." At the bottom was a scrawl I recognized instantly, K West. I took a picture of the sheet, front and back, then calmly told them to put everything back where they found it, or I'd report it as criminal trespass. They hesitated, just long enough for me to mention the cameras on the shed that lit a fire under their asses. They repacked the bins, muttered half-hearted apologies, and peeled out in that van like it was the last lap of Daytona. 15 minutes later, I emailed the footage to my lawyer, along with the photo of the document and a timeline of the incident. He replied within the hour, "Document everything. This reeks of setup." He was right. The next morning, a certified letter from the HOA appeared in my mailbox. It accused me of unauthorized demolition activity and improper disposal of landscape materials. Apparently, a concerned citizen, I'd bet my front teeth it was Karen, had witnessed contractors performing structural alterations on my property. The letter included a printed screenshot of my half-dismantled fence, taken no doubt during the 10 minutes those goons had been prying at it. They'd set me up, sent in a rogue cleanup team, documented the damage they caused, and then tried to pin it on me. It was smart, devious, bureaucratic warfare at its finest. They weren't going to win. I printed my own photos, time-stamped, and paired them with security cam footage from 3 different angles. My lawyer compiled everything into a formal complaint to the police, including the forged work order and footage of the contractors trespassing without consent. The HOA board responded with a terse email stating that they were investigating the matter internally. That was rich, the HOA investigating itself. I might as well let a fox audit the henhouse. Still, it threw them off balance, because now I wasn't just some eccentric neighbor with a chip on his shoulder. I was documenting everything, logging every incident, filing every motion through proper legal channels, and I could tell it rattled Karen. She stopped walking her dog past my house. Her little decorative patrols, as I'd come to call them, disappeared overnight. The neighborhood Facebook group, once filled with concerns about encroachment, suddenly went quiet. Like someone had told them to shut it down and wait for the next move. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to lose control and walk away. She was the type to regroup and double down. And I was already 1 step ahead. By this point, I had no illusions left. Karen didn't play to win fairly. She played to exhaust. Bureaucratic fatigue was her real strategy. She wanted me buried in paperwork, caught up in appeals and forms and procedural garbage until I either gave up or made a mistake she could crucify me for. So I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. Sort of. It started with another letter, of course. That's how Karen does her foreplay. This one was unusually civil. It came on crisp HOA stationery, complete with their ridiculous fake crest, a bald eagle flying over a perfectly mowed lawn. Very patriotic. Very suburban. The letter was an invitation, her word, not mine, to join the HOA as a community-aligned property partner. Not a member, no. That would have triggered jurisdictional issues. This was a workaround. A sly, legally ambiguous attempt to rope me in without triggering an outright challenge. They offered to waive any prior complaints if I agreed to voluntarily comply with the standards moving forward. In exchange, I'd get access to shared resources and the support of the community. It read like a cult recruitment letter with better fonts. I smelled the trap immediately. I took it to my lawyer. He confirmed what I already suspected. If I signed it as written, it could be used in court to argue I'd accepted the HOA's authority retroactively, a backdoor power grab. So we got to work. Together, we drafted a counter-agreement. On the surface, it looked like I was playing ball, agreeing to their little partnership program. But buried in the middle of paragraph 5 was a clause that nullified the agreement entirely if the HOA took any enforcement action, filed any complaint, or attempted to alter my property records in any way. A classic legal dead man switch. Even better, we added language stating that the HOA acknowledged my property as outside its jurisdiction under current municipal zoning boundaries, and that no retroactive authority shall be inferred through this voluntary participation. I had signed it, mailed it back, certified, return receipt requested. Karen bit the bait like a starving piranha. 2 weeks later, I received notice that the HOA was officially recognizing me as a participating partner. I even got a welcome email, complete with emojis, from someone named Trish, who called herself the Community Relations Liaison. That's suburban for spy. 3 days after that, HOA sent me a formal violation notice, accusing me of fence color inconsistency and demanding I repaint my gate a lighter shade of taupe. That was their mistake. My lawyer filed a motion in municipal court the same day. We provided the full signed agreement with Karen's countersignature. We highlighted the clause that rendered any enforcement attempt null and void, and requested a declaratory judgment affirming that the HOA had no legal standing over my property. The judge, bless him, wasn't impressed with their creative reading of contract law. He ruled in my favor, officially. The HOA's little workaround had just backfired so hard, it may as well have been a cartoon. The court not only voided the violation, it issued a formal statement declaring that my property was not subject to HOA authority and that my participation in their program was contractually severed by action taken by the association itself. Karen had just lost the only semi-legal lever she had left. And word got out. People started asking questions. Loud ones. Why did HOA leadership try to rope me in off record? Why did they try to enforce rules immediately after promising not to? Why was Karen's signature on a document that completely contradicted her official stance? A few folks on the HOA board suddenly weren't quite so loyal anymore. One of them, a guy named Brad who looked like he used to play second-string football for a community college, started liking all my posts. Then he sent me a DM. Let's talk. Karen must have felt the shift too because she went quiet. Not in the sulking way, in the calculating way. Her SUV didn't cruise past my property anymore. Her dog walks became someone else's job. Even her precious HOA clipboard stopped making appearances at the gazebo meetings. That's how I knew she wasn't done. She wasn't retreating. She was winding up for something worse. But I was ready, because now I had something she couldn't unsign. Her own damn name on her own damn defeat. After the court ruling, things quieted down, but it wasn't the good kind of quiet. It was loaded, the way a power line hums just before it snaps. Karen was off the radar, but that didn't mean she'd given up. No, she was regrouping. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that cornered people with a bruised ego and too much power don't back down. They double down. So I decided to strike first. It started with a spreadsheet. See, Brad, the second-string football guy who sat on the HOA board, reached out to me through encrypted email, Turns out he wasn't just fed up with Karen's nonsense, he was scared. Said the board had approved community beautification grants over the past few years that didn't smell right. Every year, thousands of dollars were handed to the same contractors, landscaping firms with vague business addresses, no online presence, and surnames suspiciously close to Karen's maiden name. He couldn't prove anything, but he had records. Dozens of PDF invoices, disbursement logs, project approvals without proper signatures. The money flowed out like clockwork, always below the amount that would trigger an automatic audit from the city, just small enough to slip under the radar. Just dirty enough to stink like hell once exposed. I brought everything to my lawyer, who agreed it warranted a real forensic audit, but not through City Hall. If we went the public route first, Karen would catch wind and start shredding files or cooking new books. No, we needed to go private, so I hired a forensic accounting firm out of San Antonio. Professionals. The kind of people who make IRS agents look like Girl Scouts. I gave them everything Brad had sent me, plus HOA financial disclosures, which, thankfully, are public record under Texas nonprofit statutes. Within 2 weeks, they called me back. What they found was impressive in a way that makes you want to burn the whole system down. Over the course of 4 years, the HOA had authorized over $72,000 in landscaping expenses to 3 different firms. All 3 were registered under variations of Green Future Solutions LLC, Future Green Landscaping, and GFS Partners. Different names, same owner. One Nathan West, Karen's nephew. Not only that, but the services billed were absurd. One firm charged $4,000 for irrigation system enhancements at a park that didn't even have running water. Another billed for 48 man-hours of tree pruning during a month when there hadn't been a single tree removed. Classic laundering. Inflate labor, pad invoices, route to family, repeat. We compiled everything, and this time, I didn't just send it to my lawyer. I sent it to 3 places at once. The City Council's Ethics Committee, the Texas Attorney General's Nonprofit Oversight Division, and, for good measure, every local news outlet with a working email address. By the end of the week, HOA's office was hit with a formal notice of inquiry. Their board was placed under preliminary audit status. Karen, she was subpoenaed. That was when the panic set in. Emails started flying. HOA board members scrambling to distance themselves, claiming they'd been misled. 2 of them resigned outright, one citing health issues, the other claiming family relocation, which I'm pretty sure was code for I don't want to be dragged down with her. Karen finally broke her silence with a truly pathetic post on the neighborhood group page. It's unfortunate that a personal vendetta has turned into a witch hunt. I've always served this community with transparency and love. Love my ass. The comments tore her apart. Residents wanted answers. Why their dues had been spent on ghost projects, why her family was cashing HOA checks, why the playground still had rotted benches, while beautification grants went to shrubs that never existed. One woman posted a photo of her son's splintered swing with the caption, "This is what my fees paid for." It was blood in the water. HOA emergency meetings followed. Karen tried to postpone the internal vote to suspend her. But with 2 board members gone and another flipping sides, she was outnumbered. She was formally suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. No more clipboard, no more SUV drive-bys, no more faux authority emails signed, "Warmly Karen." She vanished. And for the first time since this circus began, the neighborhood felt breathable. But I wasn't popping champagne just yet, because a person like Karen doesn't just take a fall. She plots her comeback before she hits the ground. And I was already planning the next move. It wasn't over. I knew it the moment I saw her name again. Not in a lawsuit or a community memo, but on a flyer duct taped to the public bulletin board near the mailbox cluster. Community Integrity Rally, this Saturday 10 a.m. Preserve our neighborhood values. And there it was. In bold type at the bottom, guest speaker Karen West, former HOA president. Former. That word sat on the page like a dead rat. She wasn't even pretending to represent the HOA anymore. This was personal now, unhinged. By that point, she was under investigation, publicly humiliated, and legally cornered. But instead of going silent like a normal person caught funneling thousands to her nephew, Karen pivoted into martyrdom. I could see the play. If she couldn't control the board, she'd try to control the people. stir them up with nostalgia and fear until they started demanding she be reinstated, or worse, that they turn their frustration back on me. And of course, the location of the rally, the community gazebo, HOA property. She didn't even have the decency to host her tantrum on neutral ground. The day of the event, I stayed far away. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of showing up. But Brad, my inside man, was there. He recorded the whole thing. The crowd wasn't huge, maybe 30 people, but Karen was in her element. She wore white like she was some kind of saint and delivered a speech that felt like a budget TED Talk meets Southern Baptist sermon. She talked about the erosion of shared values, about outsiders exploiting legal loopholes, and how the soul of this community is at stake. She never said my name, but every sentence was about me. And it worked. On some of them. The next few days, I noticed more trash tossed onto my lawn. One morning, I found a sign zip-tied to my mailbox. If you hate rules, move to the woods. Another neighbor, an older woman who used to bring me banana bread, gave me the silent treatment as I walked past her garden. The whispers started up again. Like a virus. Familiar symptoms, so I answered the way I always do. I escalated. No signs, no flyers, no backyard gatherings. I went digital. I compiled everything. Every document, every false violation, every forged community service order, the soil scam, the financial audit, and turned it into a 30-minute documentary-style video titled HOA Tyranny, How One Woman Abused Power in Plain Sight. I kept it factual, professional, but I didn't hold back. I included voice-modulated interviews with Brad and 2 former board members. I even got a brief comment from Mr. Howell, who is now living happily in Dallas, and described Karen as the type of person who thinks boundaries are optional. The footage of her rally, shaky, zoomed in but clear enough, was the cherry on top, especially the part where she shouted, "We will reclaim what's ours." I uploaded the video to YouTube, then to Facebook, then to the neighborhood forum. I didn't expect much. By the end of the week, it had 83,000 views. Local news stations picked it up. I got emails from strangers from other states telling me they were fighting their own Karens and that my story gave them hope. One guy in Arizona said his HOA president tried the same soil stability trick, and he was suing now. Karen, of course, tried to respond. She posted a half apology, half accusation on Nextdoor, claiming the video was heavily edited and motivated by vengeance. But it didn't matter. Her credibility was ash. People began openly questioning not just her, but the whole system. Neighbors demanded HOA meetings be recorded. One guy even started a petition to eliminate the HOA entirely and transition management to a third-party agency. The house she once ruled like a suburban queen now had a for sale sign on the lawn. She hadn't moved out yet, but the writing was on the wall, or more specifically, in the YouTube comments. Me? I stayed quiet. I didn't need to gloat. My work was public now, and for the first time, the community wasn't afraid to see the truth. I got the call on a Tuesday morning. It was from the city clerk's office, a polite woman named Laverne, who sounded like she ran entirely on sweet tea and disdain for nonsense. "Mr. Miller," she said, "we've concluded the municipal compliance audit for your area. The findings regarding the HOA are extensive." I leaned back in my chair, still in my pajama pants, and muttered, "I bet they are." The audit wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a brick through the windshield. Financial misconduct, failure to disclose conflicts of interest, procedural violations during enforcement actions, misuse of common area maintenance funds. It read like the greatest hits of suburban corruption. And then came the big one, unauthorized exercise of jurisdiction over non-member property. That's me. The audit recommended temporary suspension of the HOA's operational license pending further investigation. That meant the HOA, as a legal entity, couldn't issue violations, hold meetings, or collect dues until they got their shit together, which, let's be honest, they wouldn't. Karen, despite no longer being on the board, tried to file a motion to delay the suspension. She claimed institutional sabotage and accused me of waging a personal vendetta to dismantle community governance. The irony of her crying about governance while embezzling through decorative mulch wasn't lost on anyone. The motion was denied. Swiftly, the city appointed a provisional third-party administrator to oversee the HOA's transition. It was like putting a babysitter in charge of a riot. Residents were notified by mail, the board was dissolved, and Karen was formally barred from holding any official role in any HOA within the county for 10 years. The day that notice arrived, someone, I won't name names, taped a copy of it to Karen's front door. For the first time in months, she stayed inside. Meanwhile, the neighborhood began breathing again. You could feel it. Lawn chairs came back to front porches. Neighbors actually waved at each other. The Facebook group turned into what it was probably meant to be: lost dogs and power outage updates, instead of thinly veiled threats about mailbox paint. People started talking to me. Not in that fake, tight smile way, but real conversations. A couple from 3 houses down invited me to a backyard barbecue, said they'd been watching everything play out, and wanted to say thanks, even if they were too scared to speak up before. I didn't blame them. I wasn't some hero. I just refused to be steamrolled. And now, the steamroller was scrap metal. I did what I always do when I need to clear my head. I walked the lot, my property, Howell's old house, now gutted and waiting for its second life. The light hit it just right that afternoon, and for the first time, I could actually see what it would become. Not just a house, but a space, a symbol, a clean slate with scars worth keeping. Funny thing was, people started coming to me, not for revenge, not to stir drama, but for help, advice, legal tips, templates for letters, even design questions. Apparently, I'd gone from neighborhood pariah to the accidental goddamn HOA whisperer. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't say no. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's that power left unchecked will always rot, and the only thing that stops it is someone willing to shine a light straight into its eyes. And I still had batteries left in my flashlight. The house is finished now. It's strange, really, how something can be born twice. First from brick and wood, and again from resistance. Mr. Howell's old place doesn't look anything like it used to. Gone is the mildew-streaked siding and collapsing porch. Now it's steel, reclaimed timber, and giant windows that drink in the light. The lines are sharp, intentional. The layout, open. It breathes. People thought I'd flip it, sell high now that the HOA was in ashes and the property was free. But that was never the point. This place was about permanence, about proving that sometimes a man can dig in, draw a line, and keep the ground beneath him. Now it's not just my home. It's a space I've opened up, literally. I turned the rear addition into a community architecture workshop. Not fancy, not corporate. Just a place where people can learn how to build something real, whether it's a pergola, a deck, or a legal strategy for pushing back when bureaucracy knocks. We get about a dozen regulars every month. One guy's designing an accessible ramp for his elderly mom. A high school kid is restoring benches for the neighborhood park. And, yeah, a few folks come just to talk about their nightmare HOAs and how to fight them. I give them what I can. Resources, referrals, hope. I didn't think I'd be good at this part. The aftermath. I've always been better at building than bonding. But something shifted during this whole war. Maybe in me, maybe around me. Even the people who once stared me down across their petunias now nod in solidarity. One woman, Marlene, I think, even offered to bring snacks for one of our open design nights. "You're doing something good," she said. "You make this place feel ours again." And as for Karen, she moved out. Quietly. No farewell parade. The house sat vacant for a while until a young couple bought it. Artists of all things. They turned the front room into a studio and ripped out the over-regulated lawn. Now it's native grasses and wildflowers. HOA Karen would have had an aneurysm just looking at it. One day, maybe a week after she left, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No name, just my address, handwritten. Inside was a short note. "You won. I still think you were cruel, but maybe you were right. That's the part I hate most. K." I sat with it for a long time. I didn't feel glee. No victory dance, no satisfaction in her humiliation. Just quiet. She was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one. I was ruthless. I had to be. Because when someone tries to bulldoze your life under the guise of rules and order, you either dig in or you get buried. Now, standing here on the porch of this house, my house, I see everything differently. The rules I followed weren't written by an HOA. They were written in steel beams and foundation lines, in contracts and clauses, in knowing when to speak and when to let silence win. And if this place, this fight, this mess of a saga taught me anything, it's this. Property is just land, but ownership, that's earned. So when I hear someone say, it's just easier to go along, I shake my head. Sometimes the only way to save a community is to stand completely alone.